Well, welcome to another bus video. We are back at Houghton Park Hangars up here at Elmsmere Port with David again, whose lovely Daimler we drove last year. Already seems so long ago. But we're back to drive another of David's lovely buses. It's from the same fleet, the Stalybridge, Hyde, Mossley and Duckenfield Transport Board and Electricity Board.
Transport and Electricity.
Yeah, because they used to do trams. So what are we playing with today?
Well, this is a Bristol RE. RE for rear engine.
Okay.
The RE actually came in 4 flavours. There was a long wheelbase version and a short wheelbase. This is the short wheelbase version.
Yeah.
And there was a low floor version for bus work and a high floor version for coach work.
Oh gosh, so this is the low.
This is the low floor version, yeah.
How times have changed, folks.
But the floor actually does ramp down towards the front.
Okay.
The coach version, the floor was horizontal more or less to the front.
Yeah.
The reason being that obviously with a rear engine, you've nowhere for luggage.
True,
so you need to have lockers under the side of the bus.
Right.
But no, this is the short wheelbase bus version.
And who built the bodywork?
Well, the bodywork is by Northern Counties of Wigan.
Okay.
Altogether, there were 4,629 Bristol REs built.
Wow.
And Northern Counties did 11.
Oh,
they did
tiny numbers.
6 like this and 5 to a different design for the Burnley, Cone and Nelson Joint Committee. This is the only one left of the 11 now,
gosh.
so it's a unique survivor.
Wow. And what's its story in service and afterwards?
Well, it was delivered in 1967 and SHMD basically had 2 routes that went under a low bridge.
Okay.
So that's why they needed a handful of single deckers. And also they went over a very big hump called Quick Edge to get to Oldham from Mossley. So they were also used on that route. It ran until 1981. So it passed first of all to Selneck Passenger Transport Executive. Then it became Greater Manchester, and it carried on plodding along on the same 3 routes basically all that time until it was withdrawn in 81. And then it lived a sort of strange limbo life for a couple of years because it was retained by Selneck apparently for use as a workshop by GEC.
Okay.
Now, I'm not entirely sure of the full story, but I think GEC were going around installing telephone systems in bus depots. I only know that because GEC did one for me at Runcorn. And I think what they did, they just shunted it round from garage to garage where they needed it. And then in 83, they sold it to a scout troop in Stockport. And they used it for several years. In fact, the chap who used to look after it for the scout troop has given me the logbook, so I know every trip it did while the Scouts had it, and it went all over the north of England particularly, at a steady sort of 38 miles an hour. And then eventually they sold it and it went to the Haven holiday camp at Prestatyn, and it was used for internal transport. Where basically nothing got done at it. So
because it was internal, it was
because
never
it was
on the
internal
road.
transport, no MOT. So it then ended up, they managed, I think, to break the engine and the back axle. And it was then rescued for preservation. Because the back axle was seized up, it was being towed with the back end suspended. And somewhere on the way from North Wales back to Manchester, the story goes that the chap driving the breakdown truck had to do an emergency stop.
Oh no.
And the back end of the bus overrode the jib of the breakdown truck and the back end was destroyed. So about 18 inches of the floor had vanished. All this back window had gone. There's a steel stress panel across the back which was actually bent that way and folded in half. If you look at the window pan, you can just see a bit of a ripple there. Where I managed to straighten it out as much as I could. But all this was just completely wrecked.
So just that is a big rear window as well.
It's a big window, and there was no emergency door. That had disappeared as well.
Gosh.
So we had to build an emergency door from scratch. So I think what happened, to be honest, when they got it back to their yard, which was in Duckingfield, I think it just broke their hearts because they realised it needed so much doing at it.
Yeah.
And so at the time, it was owned by some chaps who were running Bristol REs in service. This was just after deregulation. And they started robbing bits off it to keep their service buses going. And when I got to it, they'd sold the business up. It was languishing in the corner of the yard with several other preservation projects. And the bus company who'd bought them out said, we want more room to run service buses. And the landlord then said, well, there's all these buses and they're not paying rent. They're just, you know. And he contacted the people who owned it and they said, sorry, we've got no money. Can't pay the rent.
Yeah.
So he rang Barnsley up and said, I've got 7 buses here and
it's a huge scrap
they need
yard.
to go for scrap. Yeah. And that's Barnsley, because is where all buses go to die.
Yeah.
So the chap said, sight unseen, I'll give you 400 quid each for them. And that was the point at which somebody tipped me off that this bus was available and was about to go to the breakers.
So what sort of time was that?
Oh, that would be, when would that be? Early 90s.
Blimey.
So I dashed down there and the chap said, give me 400 quid, you can have any one you want. And I said, I want this one.
Yeah, well, the unique survivor.
Yeah, and so from then on it was a very long saga, because at the time I was the secretary of the Keighley Bus Museum, so I had a lot of other things going on. It took a long time. I found somebody eventually to repanel the body for me, so because from the waist down it's all been repanelled. And then with one thing and another I ended up bringing the bus over here with a spare engine and a spare back axle and everything else that I'd accumulated over a period of time. Only the gearbox is original, everything else had to be changed. The back axle, we found that actually there were no brake linings on the offside. The brake shoes, the rest of them, they'd never bothered to reline them, so it had been stopping on the rivets. So there were grooves on, I've seen brake drums with grooves on the outside to cool them, but I've never seen them with grooves around the inside. This was just a real mess.
Oh dear.
So it took a long time. Fortunately, the spare axle that I had brand new linings on it. Perfect drums. And it had an incidental advantage we didn't realise, which is that it was a slightly different axle ratio, because there was a choice of about 6 axle ratios on these. And people who, I went to school with somebody who actually drove this bus in service, and he tells me that you wouldn't see 40 miles an hour when it was new.
Yeah.
It now does 47.
Whoa.
So which is useful if you're going to shows and things, because at least you can get on a bit. Yeah, you had a choice of 4 engines with the RE. You could either have the Leyland 600 or 680, or you could have the Gardner 6 HLW, which was 8.4 litres, or you could have this beast, which is the 6 HLX. This is 10.45 litres.
Blimey.
Nominally 150 brake horsepower, but of course a lot of bus companies will derate them for better economy and longer engine life.
I love the fact that they've designed it for a horizontal application, but that means that the writing is now upside down.
Upside down, yes, that's quite good, isn't it?
Yeah.
And of course you've got the oil-filled air filter here. And the air, you can see the pipe goes away because there is a scoop on the roof. So the theory is that it collects the fresh air off the roof and feeds it down here into the engine.
Where it gets turned into noise and smoke.
Where it gets turned into noise and smoke, yes, which of course goes forward. The exhaust pipe is sort of midships on the other side. One of the clever feature of the RE was that the gearbox is actually ahead of the back axle.
Right.
And again, you had a choice. You could have a semi-automatic or a synchromesh of a sort, and you could have 4 or 5 speed versions. By doing that, it meant that the weight distribution was better.
It's not all hanging out the back.
No, you've driven rear-engine buses, and you know in the wet they can be quite skittish. But the RE's manners were a lot better for that. And also, it overcame 2 other problems which rear-engine buses tended to have. One was that on some of them, like the sedans, the propeller shaft of the back axle was so short that it didn't allow for the deflection of the axle on the springs, and so the prop shaft bearings would break up very readily. Oof. And in fact, Crossville, who had 100 sedans, ended up moving the engine further back to get a longer prop shaft. And of course, the other advantage was that because you'd got rid of some of the weight flapping about at the back of the bus, it was a lot kinder to the bodywork. Yeah. You know, people don't realise that a bus is not a rigid structure like a monocoque car. It flexes as it goes down the road.
Yeah.
And if you've got a ton of machinery at the back that's bouncing up and down, eventually the body will flex, and usually somewhere around here you'll start to get rivets popping and water coming in through gaps in the panels and all sorts. But the RE was very good for that. It never really had any of those problems.
Oh, excellent.
Basically, it's just a shelf, as you can see.
Yeah, yeah. But they've just screwed a few dials in.
Yeah, when I bought it, the original dash had been mutilated because they'd put a tachograph in. Yeah. So I had to replace this. But yeah, that was the original dash was actually Bakelite, if you can believe it.
So we've got 2-pedal pneumo cyclic, is it?
No, this is not a pneumocyclic, because the pneumocyclic one, you've got actually the air connections come up to the change pedestal. This one is purely electric switch here. That operates a solenoid valve at the back, which actually operates the gears.
Mm-hmm. So as with all these, is it best to take a bit of a pause before you go into the next one? Yeah,
so allow one gear to disengage and then the other one to go in. Yeah.
Do we get power steering?
You don't get power steering.
Okay,
no.
Plenty of arm twirling?
But you've got about a third of the weight of the bus is on the front axle, 2/3 is on the back. So it's fairly nicely weighted. I mean, the RE was always regarded as a driver's bus. I don't think you'll find many people who've driven an RE who don't like it. Because the steering does give very good feedback, and it's light enough that even with a full load of passengers, you don't have to kill yourself to get it around corners, which is always a bonus.
Yeah. I love the switchgear down here.
Yeah, Northern Counties had obviously found a little bit of veneer left over, so they decided to just posh up the driver's cab a bit.
So it kind of looks like what you'd find in a house, really.
Well, yes, you've got the Crabtree electric switches, which you would have found in houses in the 1950s. Yes.
Blimey. So we got the lights, destination lighting, I guess, demister.
Yes.
Wiper, very important. A cab light.
Yeah.
These do indeed look like normal household switches.
Yes.
A big old handbrake here.
Yeah, the one that you can't quite see at the bottom is the heater.
Okay.
The label is actually underneath, so you can't see it.
Oh yeah, there we go. We can see from that angle. Wow. Indicator over there, I'm guessing.
Yes. Yeah.
Lights, horn, and screen wash, electric screen wash.
Yes, yeah, I think that's probably a later addition, because the bottle you'll see is sort of tucked behind your right elbow there.
Oh yes, there we go.
So I think that was probably an add-on.
Yeah. So the driver gets plenty of ventilation, I note here. 2 opening windows.
Well, yes. Well, of course, the bottom one is a signalling window.
Oh, for sticking your arm out for...
Do your hand signals, which was still very important in those days.
But looking further back, the passengers don't seem quite so lucky.
No,
it's a bit minimalist.
You have 2 skylights, and that's your lot.
That must have been quite toasty, because there is a lot of glass in this bus.
There is, yeah. It was a feature of the period, really. Quite a lot of bus designs of the period didn't have opening windows. In fact, I've even come across one bus that worked in Burnley, where the roof lights were air operated, so the driver could actually open and shut the front and the back.
Annoyed a driver, and he either makes you too cold or too hot.
Yeah, but they're an unusual idea. But
lovely. What are the seats trimmed in?
These seats are now trimmed in vinyl. They were originally done in green hide.
Wow.
But I'm afraid my budget wouldn't run to...
No, that's a lot of cows.
Yeah, when I inherited the bus, most of the seat cushions were already green vinyl.
Yeah.
A lot of the backrests were still the original hide, but they were all rotten, and the stitching was splitting apart. And of course, because of this sort of pleated finish, it uses a vast amount of material. Much more than just having a flat panel.
Well, I guess we're getting to the time where I should probably have my first RE experience. Right then, so let's just quickly go through the controls before we drive off. The gear lever is also the door activator. So if I move the gear lever to the D position, the door's open. And then similarly, close again when I move it back to neutral. So you can't accidentally drive along with the doors open. We're not going to use first because we're unladen, we don't really need to. So I'm going to go for second, which is there, a bit of a thud into gear. Handbrake goes all the way down there. Pop a signal on, and no power steering, so heave the wheel. And very smoothly and very pleasantly she is away. So it's a fluid flywheel, so there is no clutch pedal. Drive is taken up automatically as the revs increase. So fluid flywheels also fitted on Daimler buses and cars. Someone coming there, so I'm going to have to stop. We'll probably pick the busiest time possible, but there we go. Start feeding this lock off. Wait for traffic coming the other way. And then it's very similar to the Leyland National, in that you ease off, pause for a bit, into the next gear, and we're away. And soon we can build our speed up. Not very much speed. Buses in these days just didn't really do much in the way of speed. So we can get up to the dizzy heights of 47 miles an hour eventually. But yeah, a lot easier to drive than the Daimler I drove the last time I was here. But by heck did I enjoy that. That was a lovely experience. Try and rev match. I'm not very good at that yet. And another cyclist. I'm getting all the hazards today. Yeah, it's a nice length. It's not too long. I remember driving the Leyland Nationals. They're a full 38 foot long. They're a bit more of a challenge, but yeah, this is a really nice manageable length. Hop into second. You can't go into reverse by mistake. You have to pull out this safety knob, so that at least isn't a worry. So another difference to the Daimler, we've got air brakes on this one. This is why you can hear them hissing and squelching away. Stay in right hand lane because we're going to go right just down here. Oh, very lovely thing to drive. Bristol, the manufacturer of this bus, has a very long and impressive history. It kind of started in the late 1800s, building its first buses in about 1908, I think, and then started building buses for other manufacturers. And the RE was very popular until a certain Leyland National came along and started stealing all the rear engine sales. Feed that wheel. So you have to lift off the throttle as you do the changes, but otherwise a very simple bus to drive. Something that surprises me about this bus, it rides really well. The road is very badly broken up there, but very comfortable, and no suspended seat here. It's not a lot more comfortable than the passengers are expecting, I don't think. So it's strange to think this is the only one of its type with Northern Counties bodywork that still exists. That's quite sad really, but thank goodness vehicles like this do still exist in preservation. It is such an important movement. This is an ideal moment for the wiper test. Oh, there it is. Oh, look at that. A chaotic, out of sync pairing. I'm going to regret that decision, aren't I? Oh, that was a nice rev match. Well, there we go. Another very enjoyable driving experience here at Houghton Park Hangars. So do come and visit when you can. They do hold open days here. There's a little aero museum, and quite often you get the buses out for people to have a look at. Do you do passenger rides as well?
We do on the open days, yes.
On the open days, yes. So yeah, keep an eye on their Facebook page. Seems to be where most of their details are, and you might be able to have a ride on this very bus one day. Who knows? But yeah, thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
And we hope you've enjoyed it too. Don't forget to head to the Hubnut store if you would like to buy lovely merchandise. But otherwise, we shall see you in a future video. Farewell.